Today, we're going to be talking about some of the most nerve-wracking FNAF fan games the community has ever made. From unbearable tension to moments where you know something horrible could happen at any second, these games constantly keep you on edge. Some of these barely give you a chance to calm down before the panic starts all over again, so let's get into it. A plot twist is a literary technique that introduces a radical change in the direction or expected outcome of the plot in a work of fiction. Now tell me, can you think of a horror game that pulls off an insane twist? Maybe Resident Evil 8 in its crazy twist comes to mind. Now let me ask you another question. Can you name a FNAF game with a crazy twist? A twist so cool you have to sit back and think, wow, that was pretty sick. The game I'll be covering today has one of those twists, and I'm incredibly excited to share with you the amazing experience I had while playing Showman's The Awakening. For those of you already familiar with this game, you may know that it actually has a game that came before it. Kinda. Years ago, the same developer released a game called Phobia: The Awakening, using the Wiggles as inspiration for the characters. Well, turns out the dev wanted to remake their game using their own original characters to continue the story, so now here we are with Showman's. This may lead you to ask the question, if I've already played Phobia, is there even a point to playing Showman's? And trust me, this is a question I've asked myself. Originally, I saw people asking me to play Showman's. I played Phobia on my second channel, Dexter Black, not knowing at the time that Showman's was a thing, learning soon after the first episode went up that it was in fact a thing. So I questioned, does it even bother to play it? Well, recently I've made the decision to do exactly that and give Showman's a try. And let's just say, if you've played Phobia, play Showman's. It's everything Phobia is and more. So join me as we quake our asses into Showman's The Awakening. In Showman's, we play as a guy named Mark Ward, an employee of Showman's Pizza Place. And in night one, we're introduced to two of the animatronics that will be trying to insert their fingers into orifices we'd really prefer they keep their grubby little hands away from. But before we can talk about them, we should talk about the tools at our disposal. Something really interesting you'll notice about the office is that you're able to look everywhere. Up, down, left, right, behind you, below you. It's actually really cool. It's really the first thing I noticed jumping into the game. The reason for this is actually because Showman's wasn't created in ClickTeam Fusion like most FNAF games are. Instead, it was created in Blender, which is what most FNAF games use to model their characters, and is something I also had no idea could be used to program a game. So that was pretty cool learning for the first time. Anyways, you'll see two large hallways on your left and right, which you can light up using buttons on your desk. In front of you is this lady. Hey, hottie. She's not hot, I'm not even gonna lie, she's not even bad. Who we'll be talking about later in the video. And if you look behind you, you'll be able to see the clock where you can tell how much longer of the night you have to get through. Oh yeah, and of course, there's cameras, because it really wouldn't be a FNAF game without those. With that out of the way, now we can talk about the first two threats this game introduces, Johnny and Harry. Now I know, those names aren't very normal sounding when thinking in terms of Five Nights at Freddy's, when usually we're having names so utterly stupid you'd be forced to think they were a fictional character. But no, these two are still robots, and you still cannot have intercourse with them, so please remove all thoughts of that nature from your head for the remainder of this video. Johnny and Harry both start from the show stage and do the exact same thing. Johnny will move through the cameras to your right hallway, and Harry will move through your left hallway, where they will then enter what I'm going to be calling their attack mode. During their attack mode, they have 5 phases. Each phase has a sound cue, and it's important that you're listening for them. With each phase, they'll move closer and closer towards your office, with the final phase having them walk up to you. Obviously, you can check their distance by flashing the light at them, and by doing so, you will also temporarily stun them in place. However, I would highly recommend you don't turn the lights on when they're in the hall, as I personally feel it's much more efficient to just let them attack you so they can piss off as fast as possible. Every time Johnny or Harry enters a new phase, their eyes will glow for a short time after their sound cue plays. So when you hear it, you can just turn in the direction to double check that they've moved. On these earlier nights, you really don't have to be super careful with them. Flashing lights and not counting sound cues isn't really important since they're your only threats. So I'll get into a bit of a better strategy for them later on. However, once they enter your office, you'll have to quickly throw on a spare mask to fool them into walking away, just like the animatronics from Five Nights at Freddy's 2. And that's really it. Night 1 is pretty damn easy, really just introducing the basics needed to understand two very important mechanics. After beating Night 1, we see a cutscene, something that was not originally in Phobia. In it, we meet with the founder of Showman's, Jason Baker. He confirms with us that only Johnny and Harry were active on our shift, and we confirm. Apparently, this should not be happening, and it's a known issue. So that's good at least. Jason tells us that a previous employee mentioned more characters moving, which in all honesty doesn't bode well for my anus, given the fact we still have 5 more nights of this to deal with. But we get our things and go home for the night, only to come back to work in the morning. Night 2 introduces 2 new animatronics, and let me tell you, this is where the game starts to show how much of a pain in the dick it's about to become. The first character we should talk about is the fine shite sitting in front of us, Peggy. Peggy reminds me a lot of the scrapped animatronics from Five Nights at Freddy's Pizzeria Simulator, just given the fact of the way she moves subtly like them. She also reminds me a lot of what Anissa's husband really doesn't want her to do to him. Whenever you're not looking at her, whether that be checking on the cameras, looking at the hallways, or checking the clock behind you, Peggy has a chance to advance phases. You'll be able to see her start by looking down and slowly transfer through the phases until she's ready to attack. In order to reset her, all you have to do is flip the breaker switch on your desk to shock her and she'll reset. But be careful not to just spam this lever over and over, because every time you shock her, she becomes more aggressive, leading to the end of nights becoming incredibly stressful due to how fast she'll be attacking you. Cap'n Cackle is the other menace introduced on Night 2. He is this game's Foxy. If you couldn't tell by looking at him, he's a pirate, just like Foxy. Also, he looks like he's cracked out of his fucking mind, zooted to the fucking moon. Seriously, look at this geeked out motherfucker. Holy shit, bro hasn't slept in 18 days. Look at those eye bags. What the hell happened? Stop looking at me, dude. Tell me that guy doesn't smoke crystal meth. Look at those fucking eyes. What are you doing? Hey. That's the face I make when I'm about to eat ass, bro. Anyways, similar to Foxy, he'll have several phases on camera 6. Watching him will slow his progression and even in some cases make him go backwards. If he happens to leave camera 6, he doesn't do exactly what Foxy does. Instead, he'll just start moving through your cameras like any other character would, albeit very quickly. If you manage to stare at him in one of those other cameras, he will go back to camera 6, where you can continue oogling at him to make him stay put. Both Peggy and Cap'n Cackle work very well together, and the same goes for Johnny and Harry. We have 2 other central characters left to introduce, and you'll notice that those 2 also work very well in tandem with one another. This is something I need to give this game praise for. It is so incredibly good at introducing new mechanics in a way that's stressful, yet engaging and fun. You introduce Peggy, a character that moves when you don't look at her, and Cap'n Cackle, another character who moves when you're not looking at him. And because these 2 characters are in different places, it forces you to learn how to balance them together. God, it's so fucking cool. Similar to last night, this night also has a cutscene after completion. In it, we're seen walking to the exit of the building. We hear a noise and quickly turn around to see an unknown animatronic staring back at us. It stares for a while before turning around and walking away. This is a character we haven't yet seen. Even the characters we'll be talking about on later nights can be seen on the cameras all the time, but this one can't. Keep him in the back of your head as he'll become important later. For now, let's move on to Night 3. Night 3 only introduces one character, but it also introduces another incredibly important mechanic, that being your vents. The animatronic introduced on Night 3 is Tony the Chef. He will enter your vents. You'll notice on your cameras that you have 3 camera vents. Tony can enter 2 of them, those being either camera 12 or camera 11. In these vents, he will have multiple phases he will move through before attempting to enter your office. With each movement, a very quiet sound cue will play, a stark contrast to Phobia where the sound cue was very noticeable. By double-clicking on a vent cam, you can lock the vent. Locking a vent uses no power because the game has no power to begin with. Praise God. Once a vent is closed, you can keep it closed as long as you'd like, with no consequences. The only downside is that you can only close one vent at a time. So this night really isn't all too different from night 2. Well, now's the time when I want to talk about sound cue counting with Johnny and Harry, as it's this night where you'll probably want to start getting used to doing that. As I mentioned earlier, Johnny and Harry each have 5 different phases in your hallway. The first is when they initially enter the hallway. You'll be able to tell because you can see their eyes in the hallway for a brief moment, and because you'll be able to hear their big ol' feet stomping around, kind of like I want Toy Chica to stomp on my testicles. Once one of them enters your hallway, you can stop checking on them and focus on listening. Start a mental count of 3 in your head. All sounds in this game are directional, so that really helps. Whenever you hear footsteps on either side of you, decrease that side's number by 1. Once the counter reaches 0, you know that the next time you hear footsteps from that side is when they'll walk into your office to attack. Okay, 4 left, or 3 till he's at the last stage. 2 left until he hits door. Okay, 1 more. And he's at the line. He's walking the thin line. 1 more. I want to see how close I can cut it. Hi. Oh, yes. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for that. Doing this while they're both attacking you at the same time can get a little overwhelming, and on later nights they do like to attack together a lot. But if you can nail this counting strategy, they really shouldn't be too much of an issue. After completing night 3, we get to watch another lovely cutscene. In it, we're looking through the factory for who the fuck knows what. We open a crate and find a Johnny plush inside. Seeing this toy seems to trigger some primal instinct in us, and we pass the fuck out. Honestly, bro, probably not the greatest place to lose consciousness. I'm not even gonna front. We awake in another room, only to look up and see Showman. Scared as shit, we wake up from our slumber only to realize it was a short dream we had after we had passed out. There is clearly something mentally wrong with our dear, beloved Mark. We just have to figure out what it is. Night 4 introduces the man himself, Showman. Showman works in perfect tandem with Tony, also attacking your vents. Although, unlike Tony, Showman can only attack your camera 13 vent. However, he also fucking loves to do this at the same time that Tony is jumping penis first into your vents. Showman only has 3 phases in the vent before attacking, so notably faster than Tony. So while both of them are attacking your vent, you really have to be counting their positions to figure out whose vent you need to close first, because once again, you can only have one closed at a time. If one of those fuckers get into your office, they're gonna crank that soldier boy and clock you in the jaw. I'm just gonna go ahead and put this on and hope to God. Okay, so it didn't work. I couldn't tell which one was closer, bro. I thought the guy I had blocked off was closer. I couldn't tell. All in all, each character is incredibly easy to deal with, but because of how perfectly they all work together, it can lead to an incredibly stressful experience trying to play against all of them at the same time. However, never at any point throughout my playthrough did I feel like this game was unfair or that RNG was too much of a factor. This game, dare I say it, might have borderline perfect video game balancing. After completing night 4, of course, we get another cutscene. This one taking place before we go to work for the night. Before we enter our car, we get a call from Jason, telling us not to come in to work tonight. He says things are getting too dangerous and that it would be unsafe for us to go through our shift. We agree to not go in tonight, except the plot twist is that I fucking lied and we're gonna go in anyways, because we hate authority like a 16-year-old white boy from the suburbs. On night 5, we get a call from the phone guy, and let me tell you, he is absolutely pissed that we decided to come in for the night. He explains that anything in that building that moves will be demolished in the morning. He tells us to do whatever it is we're trying to do and get out, because they're not going to send anyone into the building to get us out. Other than that, Night 5 is exactly what you'd think it is, just a much more difficult version of Night 4, really testing your reflexes and especially your nerve control. But on this night is when I have to bring up really the only problem I have with this game. Volume. This game is actually the loudest fucking game on planet Earth. Holy shit. Everything makes noise, and it makes a damn lot of it at that. There are typically ambient sounds in FNAF games, but for the love of God, this game plays intense music throughout most of the night, and it is loud as dick and balls. Want to hear the best part? As you get closer and closer to 6 a.m., the music adds more components and gets even fucking louder. This really doesn't help when so much of my strategy revolves around listening to sound cues. It's fucking crazy just how loud this game is. Now granted, was this something that was intended? Most definitely. And I'm not even saying that it's a bad thing, because obviously inherently it isn't. I was still able to beat the game just fine, and I feel like most other people would be able to beat it just fine as well. But this is something I couldn't not talk about. I love this game, but of course I'm not going to always be able to glaze everything I see, and I think this is truly the only flaw this game has. But hey, who gives a fuck about what I think? Let's move on to the cutscene, baby. Let me just say, I love this cutscene. I think everything about it is great. The pacing, the acting, everything is just so good that I don't want to ruin it by just talking about it. I'd much rather just show you.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, put your hands together for our birthday boy!
Please, just leave me alone.
Well, god damn. We really should have listened and not come back, huh? So, it's safe to say that our pal Mark really got fucked here. Something I think is actually really cool. It's fairly common for FNAF games to have a character die in them, most commonly a phone guy, but to actually see it like this is just awesome. Going into night 6, we actually get a cutscene before the night happens rather than after it. In it, we play as the phone guy going into the building to get Mark. After a bit of searching, we find him, and once again, I think it'll just sit much better with you if you just watch it for yourself.
Mark? Is that you?
You shouldn't have went in there, bro. You shouldn't have went in there, bro. You shouldn't have went in there, bro. You should have done that shit. Oh, fuck.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
What do I do? Keep yourself together.
Are you fucking me? That's right. Turns out Mark isn't dead, but is just kind of possessed. Phone guy, or his real name, Matthew, runs back to the office with Mark on the pursuit, and night 6 begins. Night 6 consists of 4 threats, 2 of which we've already covered, Cap and Cackle and Peggy. However, you'll immediately notice that they both look pretty fucked up. Why is this? Well, turns out by demolish the animatronics, they really meant set the whole fucking building on fire. Because once again, it wouldn't be a FNAF game without a fire, right? Oh yeah, and of course, they are way more aggressive. Another thing you'll notice immediately is that we're stuck with the flashlight instead of the building lights. And let me tell you, as I'm sure you can already see, it is dark as fucking shit in this goddamn building with no lights. Of course, your flashlight has power, so you'll have to use it sparingly. You'll need to use it to check the hallways and to even be able to see Peggy in front of you. This honestly adds a whole new level of fear to this game, mainly with Peggy. I never got very good at telling when she switched positions, and to now have it where I can't even naturally see her just added a whole new fear factor, and I love it. The other two threats are the animatronic we saw in the Post-Night 2 cutscene, dubbed the Figure, and Mark himself, which is honestly one of the coolest twists I've ever seen. Having the character you've been playing as the whole time flip like this, it's insane. It's honestly one of the coolest things I've ever seen come out of a FNAF game. Let's start with Mark. Mark works the same as Harry and Johnny, except I feel like he's even easier. He can attack from either of the two halls, and unlike Johnny and Harry, you cannot see his eyes. He's also much quieter. The reason I think he's easier? Well, you don't have to do any mental counting to tell when he's going to attack, as he has a totally unique sound cue for when he enters your office. So as long as you've got fast reflexes, it's really just a game of waiting to hear the sound cue and putting on the mask. The final new threat on this night is, of course, the Figure. He takes the place of Tony and Showman attacking your vents. He can attack any of the three you have, since there won't be two characters going for the vents at the same time. Again, I honestly feel like this is easier than Tony and Showman. Of course, the Figure is fucking light speed fast when choosing and climbing through vents, so as long as you've got fast reflexes, it really shouldn't be too much of a challenge. Ironically enough, the main challenge I had with this night was not the two new threats, but the two returning threats, Peggy and Cap and Cackle. Again, these two have the best synergy out of any of the characters in this game, so bringing them back for night 6 was a no-brainer. Really, the actual problem for me was Peggy. The sheer speed at which she moves is enough to make you shit in your britches, and nearing the end of the night, she will be moving at a speed Usain Bolt would be creaming his pants over. But if you can control your nerves for long enough, you'll complete night 6 and move on to the post-night cutscene. Matthew runs as fast as he can to the exit, only to find it locked. Turning around, we see Mark slowly creeping up on us like the booty cheek creep freak. The screen cuts to black, and we're left with only the screams of Matthew echoing throughout the pizzeria, and Showman's The Awakening comes to a close. Kind of. We're not exactly done just yet. There's actually 6 other secrets this game has to offer, that being the secret tapes. On each night, you will be able to find one of these tapes and play them later. On night 1, if you check camera 9, you'll be able to see a tape on the shelf in the top left corner. Night 2's tape is located in one of the drawers in your office. Night 3's tape is located on camera 3 on a shelf in the bottom left corner. Night 4's tape is located on camera 2 at the top of the screen. Night 5's tape is located on camera 5 on a high shelf in the middle of the camera, and Night 6 tape is conveniently located directly in front of you on the desk. Hey there, post-scripting Deku here. Turns out I'm fucking wrong. These are not the locations of the tapes on every night. Turns out every single night, besides the 6th one, has a random location for each tape, each being on a different camera. This was just the order that I had. So, yeah. Sorry about that. These tapes, as I'm sure you could have guessed, go over some extra bits of lore to help us piece together the story. And this is the part of the video where I say, I'm very sorry guys, I'm terrible at talking about story, but I'm going to try my best here. Tape 1 shows all of the characters on stage singing the happy birthday song to a kid whose name isn't explicitly said. We can see by the date of the tape that this takes place in 1995. Tape 2 seems to be a sort of log from Jason, explaining his reasoning for why he believes the characters are acting so hostile. Originally, when they were first being built, they attempted to add an advanced facial recognition system that would allow the characters to actually see and think for themselves. Although the system never ended up working as intended, they wiped the idea from their systems. Well, guess what, fucker? Turns out they really didn't, and Jason seems to think that this is the reason the characters are acting the way they are. Jason makes a brief mention of an unnamed him and questions if one of his employees are potentially tampering with the characters. I'm guessing that him is referring to either Mark or the Figure. Tape 3 shows 2 guys working on Tony. They're talking about how these robots should be scrapped because of how old they are, and then the guy in the back says a sentence that I literally cannot for the fucking life of me decipher. Like many other things in this game, the static that plays during these cutscenes is so fucking loud I can't hear anything except it. I'll play what he says here, and if any of you guys can decipher it, please let me know in the comments.
That company's been up in deals with recently.
Why?
Tape 4 is one of my favorites. It really gives off the FNAF VHS style that I really like. A maintenance worker is running a test on Cap'n Cackle. It doesn't quite go as planned as he bugs out, so they restart him and then get attacked. Afterwards, showing the lifeless corpse of the employee laying on the floor in front of Cap'n Cackle. It's just such an unnerving moment to see this in person. Usually when it comes to FNAF games and death, you don't see it. So seeing it in a game like this is really unnerving, and it adds a sort of realism to the actual events that are taking place. Tape 5 is probably my favorite of all the tapes, being the most terrifying in my opinion. In it, we're in the perspective of what sounds like a young girl. Hiding under a table, we hear a scream from another room. Shortly after, Johnny walks into the room and starts to look around. The girl accidentally makes a noise, and when she looks back up, Johnny is staring at her. And he quickly goes for the kill. This is such a fucking horrific and terrifying situation to think about being in, and I think that's why I like it so much. Just imagining being in the same situation makes my hair stand. Tape number 6 is an odd one. We appear to be being spoken to by the figure. He tells us that the birthday we saw earlier was Timmy's 12th birthday. He had 2 of his friends with him that day, and it was a party made specifically for him. Then we see 3 drawings of his friends, all of them sad. The figure appears in front of us and slowly glances up before the tape ends. Again, as I've previously stated, lore analysis is not my strong suit at all, so I really can't even begin to imagine what anything here means. I know robots mad and robots kill, and I think that is neat enough. Overall, Showman's The Awakening is such a big step up from Phobia, and while I still do love that game, I think I love Showman's even more. Amazing graphical upgrades, fantastic cutscenes, and a gameplay loop that's so fun, difficult, yet still not frustrating. This game really has it all, and I truly think it's a fantastic game to play if you're at all interested in horror games. Even if you're not a huge Five Nights at Freddy's fan, I still think you should give it a try. Scopophobia is the irrational fear of being persistently stared at or watched. For most people, I feel being watched is one of those things that is just universally feared. Several forms of media have been made around it, from books to movies, and of course, horror games. But what about FNAF games? What is the scariest FNAF game you've ever played? And while playing it, did you get the strange feeling that you were being stalked? Banshee is a new FNAF fan game created by Kimarzuru and released fully on July 23rd, 2025. For a lot of people, the FNAF genre hasn't grown boring, but has lost a lot of the fear factor that it once had. I know for me personally that is the case. Sure, cheap jump scares will always startle people, but actually being scared is something that most FNAF games just aren't capable of doing anymore. Banshee, however, is different. Banshee isn't just scary, Banshee is horrifying. Grab a drink and get ready to jump into the rabbit hole that is Banshee, Five Nights at Freddy's most horrifying fan game. Banshee is a game heavily inspired by the original Five Nights at Freddy's Pizzeria Simulator, mainly taking inspiration from the night sections of that game, wherein instead of beating the night by surviving, you instead have to complete multiple tasks, making the length of the night dependent on you. Of course, when you think of Pizzeria Simulator, the very well-known salvaging sections may come to mind, and don't worry, Banshee has those too. Before every night, you will have to salvage a character in much the same way you do so in Pizzeria Simulator. On night 1, you have to salvage Springtrap. Pause. This design is actually horrific. This is gross. I haven't seen a model from a game that made me as uncomfortable as this one has in a long time. And trust me, they only get more grotesque and uncomfortable as we follow the White Rabbit. To salvage a character, you must first play an audio cue from the tape player in front of you. You can hold up the miliguas, I don't know, to measure the animatronic's aggravation. As you play the audio, the meter will slowly rise, and having it stay on the highest setting for too long will result in a death. Additionally, your tape player may start to malfunction while the sound is playing. If you hear this, you must stop playing the tape for a few moments before turning it back on. The animatronics do not like when the tape player is broken. Once you have the animatronics aggression maxed, input some info into the computer, and it's on to the real night section. And let me tell you, if you thought the night gameplay from FNAF 6 was stressful, you're not ready for what's in store for you in Banshee. Night 1 introduces 2 characters. You may be wondering how that's possible since we've only scrapped one, and that's because one of the 2 characters was in your restaurant from the beginning, that threat being Yellow Bear. Ooh. Wait, am I not safe? Why do I get the feeling that I'm not safe? What the fuck was that? But before we can talk about the threats this night has to offer, we first need to talk about the tasks at hand and our environment. In our office, we obviously have a computer, as well as the doors to our left and right, and a window in front of us. Pressing Control will open up our computer, and this is where the first stressful mechanic comes into play. Unlike most FNAF games, where you have your mouse as the main source of user input with the occasional control key, Banshee makes use of your entire keyboard. No, I'm not joking. Your computer has 2 screens, your command screen and your camera screen. You may notice you're unable to press any buttons on the camera screen that would allow you to see around the building. So, how do you see additional cameras? This is where your command screen comes into play. By typing the command CC and pressing enter, you will get access to your camera controls, which is obviously what the CC stands for, dumbass. You can then use your arrow keys to transfer up and down between cameras. No, you cannot use your arrow keys if your camera controls are not up, which means if you're working on something else like a task and need to check a different camera, you will need to type in the camera control command and then start sifting through the cameras. This is obviously stressful as fuck for a number of reasons. On later nights when things begin becoming more hectic, if you're not a fast typer or you can't remember where the keys on your keyboard are without looking, then this will pose a very obvious problem. I mentioned your tasks. What are those exactly? Well, you have 4 tasks you have to complete. Kind of. You don't actually have to complete any tasks to beat Banshee, as there still is a 12 to 6 a.m. timer. So, what's the purpose of the tasks? And to be truthful, the answer is that I don't really know. At the end of each night, it tallies how many tasks you've completed, and that seems to have something to do with how much money you get. So I'm assuming that the only downside is not having money for your tycoon, which is needed for the true ending. But there may be another reason I'm unsure of, and the wiki is no help. Anyways, back to the tasks. Task number 1 requires you to look at 2 items that are going to be shipped. You will have to check if both sides are identical. If they are, type Y and press enter, and if they don't match, press N and then enter. Do this 8 times and the task is complete. But if you ever mess up, you will have to start back from 0. This task is not challenging, but when paired with the other threats this game has to offer, it will quickly become stressful to even be able to manage this. Task 2 requires you to read an excerpt of who the fuck knows what, and either archive it or shred it. To keep it simple, if it's good press, archive it. If it's bad press, shred that bitch. Task 3 involves sitting on your fat lazy ass and waiting for a code to decipher, and then inputting the numbers and pressing enter. Task 4 is much the same, but instead of numbers, it's arrow inputs. And that's all the tasks, which means we can start talking about the threats that this night has to offer. The first of which being the one I mentioned earlier, Yellow Bear. While you never really actually see him, he does still attack you. Throughout the night, you will be able to see posters, drawings, and books around your office that start to change to say, "It's me." If too many of these anomalies occur, Yellow Bear will appear and kill you. In order to make these anomalies go away, you will need to look forward, not have your computer on, and close your eyes for who the fuck knows how long. When you open them back up, they should be gone. If they're not, close your eyes for longer next time, dumbass. Hands down, the easiest threat in this entire game. The other threat is obviously Springtrap, or as this game calls him, just Afton. Afton will walk around the cameras and make his way to your left door. When he's there, he will make no sound cues. Or at least, if he does make a sound cue, I was just never able to hear it. When he is there, all you have to do is turn at him and stare until he moonwalks back into the darkness. Again, some of the creepiest shit I've ever seen. So where is he? What the fuck was that? Oh my God, that's actually so fucked. Dude, that's actually so fucked up. That's actually so fucked, dude. Oh my fuck. Oh my fuck. And that's it. Either by completing all the tasks or surviving until 6 a.m., the night will be finished and we're safe to move on to night 2. Now, before we do that, this is where I should probably talk about the tycoon section of this game, but that whole pile of bullshit will be saved until later, because in my full playthrough, which you can see on my second channel, Dexter Black, I butchered the tycoon sections so fucking horribly, you have no idea how badly I fucked them up. So I'll just save that for later. For now, we move on to Salvage 2. Salvage 2 is called Molten, who I originally thought was Ennard. And maybe it is, and this is just another case of the game giving it a different name. I'm not sure. Regardless, he is obviously the threat introduced on this night. So, how does he work? He actually has 2 different mechanics and methods of attack. The first is very similar to Afton, except he attacks from the right door instead of the left. Same thing for him, just look at him and he'll go away. However, once he goes away, he has a chance to initiate his second attack, which by the way can also happen at any time, not just when he leaves your office. Your lights will begin to flicker and an audible sound cue will be heard. This tells you that you need to very quickly find Molten on the cameras. God, is there a FNAF game in existence that doesn't have this fuck-ass mechanic? Whatever. Obviously, you'll probably be doing a task when this happens, so you'll have to type the camera control command and then start using the arrow keys to find him. When you do, you will need to type play and press enter, which will begin playing an audio lure on whatever camera you're looking at. This audio lure will make Molten piss off, which makes everyone happy. Overall, not too difficult. However, from what the community has said, Molten by far caused more deaths than any other character, and I can somewhat agree on that. Night 3 has a scrap Lefty, who in this game is a girl. Maybe Lefty was a girl in the original too? I'm not sure, not important. Lefty can prove to be a very frustrating character, but once you understand how she works, it really shouldn't be an issue. Lefty will very slowly move through the cameras to get to your office. However, if she gets to your office, she'll kill you no matter what. So you have to find a way to keep her from reaching you. Once she progresses to a camera, she will never move back. However, you can use the audio lure on whatever camera she's in to slow her down. This won't stop her from moving, but it will slow her progress dramatically. So much so that even on the hardest non-custom night she appears in, she only ever moved once for me. This obviously does bring up a conflict with Molten, but with how slowly Lefty moves, getting back to her camera in time to put the lure back on really shouldn't be much of an issue. Night 4 introduces the final new character, Baby. Baby is easily the most infuriating character throughout this entire game, and it's not even close. Baby will move through the cameras. Who the fuck cares? Once she's in your office, she will appear in the window in front of you. After a few seconds, she will either walk left or right. Depending on which direction she walks, you will have to close the door on the corresponding side. Something I didn't even know you could do up until this night. After you close the door, a small sound key will play letting you know she's left, and then you can reopen the door. This doesn't sound too hard, I hear you saying. Well, I haven't told you about the bullshit butt-fuck wombo combo butt bang strategy that she has. Basically, the bullshit butt-fuck wombo combo butt bang strategy involves Baby doing a fucking fusion dance with Molten. And when they do, they decide it'd be really fucking funny to attack you at the same time, which, if you couldn't have guessed already, is literally an immediate loss, as both means of fending them off take up a decent amount of time. The amount of time it would take is enough to have the other butt fuck you in the ass, hence the name, bullshit butt fuck wombo combo butt bang strategy. There's Baby up there. Oh. Yeah. This is cooked. This is cooked. This is actually cooked. Bro, I'm fucked. I'm fucked. There's nothing I can do about that. I was pressing enter, you. That was just cooked. There was nothing I could do about that. I don't know how long I have to hold it for Baby. And he was on my ass. I really didn't know what to do there. Really didn't know what the option was. This is really the only huge RNG problem this game has, and it doesn't happen nearly as often as something like Toy Bonnie Vent AIDS does. Finally, we have Night 5, which is an interesting night, to say the least, as it's actually easier than Night 4. Sure, the animatronics are more aggressive, but I still think overall it's probably easier than Night 4 is. No new threats are added. However, one of them is removed, that being Lefty. What is the reason for having Lefty not present on this night? I'm really not sure. So this night goes just about as well as you'd expect it to. And with that, the game is over. We get a final monologue from Henry as he burns down the building with us inside, mentioning how he didn't want us to go, but he needs to bring his daughter back. I'm gonna be honest, I don't give a fuck about this ending. You wanna know why? Because it's not canon in any way. Yeah, this is the bad ending, by the way. The true ending has a lot to do with the tycoon sections of the game. And god damn it, that means it's time for me to go over this bullshit. First, let's go over how I fucked up this tycoon section as hard as I did. When you first load up the game and open the tycoon section, this is what the tycoon looks like. Fantastic. Looks like we're going to build off of this. Pretty interesting and different from the original. Want to know the fucking hilarious part? The game expects you to press this button and erase your tycoon save data so that the tutorial for the tycoon section will begin playing. Does it tell you to do this? No. So why the fuck would I even think to do it? Sure, I pressed the button and saw the message to erase the save in my playthrough, but this is literally the first time I'm seeing the tycoon. Why in God's green fuck would I think to reset the data of the tycoon when I've never seen it look any different? I'm expecting to get comments calling me stupid for not figuring this out, but fuck you. You wouldn't buy a game, start the game up, and then think, actually, before I start playing this brand new game I've never played before and is brand fucking new, I should reset the save data for it first. You would never think of that. I'm sorry, this is just the most retarded thing I've ever seen. There is literally no indication whatsoever that I should reset the save. If there was indication, then there wouldn't be an issue, but there isn't. I'm just shown the tycoon and that's it. But hey, let's just relax for a moment and pretend like this part of the game actually makes sense. What exactly do you do? Well, you obviously go through the tutorial and learn how to play the tycoon, and then can get to building. And then from there, it's just Pizzeria Simulator. Buy things from the catalog and add them to your pizzeria to get points and level up. Fantastic! Completing the tasks during the nights will give you the money you need to buy more in the tycoon sections as well. Fantastic! Now, after completing night 1 is where the game starts to get a bit interesting. On the main menu, after completing night 1, you will see this big red box. Clicking on it will reveal a statue of a banshee. Turning it to its side will reveal a note describing that you need to look northwest to find a key. Wait one night and look again to find a door, presumably that the key would be used in. Going to your tycoon and scrolling all the way northwest, you'll be able to see a small red dot. Clicking on it will reveal a golden rose, which is presumably the key that was referenced in the note. Now, pause. I'm going to complain here again about how I fucked this up so badly. I had no idea that the map could be scrolled. Why? Because I was never taught in the tutorial, and I never saw the tutorial for reasons explained earlier. However, what I did do was click around the top northwest corner of the screen looking for this key. Clicking the big sign reveals a very dark red screen with some random text that'll become important later. So, this leads me to believe that this was the thing northwest that I was supposed to see. I thought I was doing the right thing. This series of coincidences is actually insane. Sure, there's no literal key here, but that led me to assume that the key was a metaphor for something else. Now tell me, would it be unreasonable for me to suspect some kind of retarded metaphor from a FNAF game? I don't think so, but whatever. After beating night 2, if you go back to the tycoon and press the red dot again, you'll see a golden pillar. Altar? I don't fucking know what this thing is. You can place the rose you got from the previous night there, which reveals a drawing of the marionette, the same drawing that you can see in your office above your computer. During night 3, if you click the marionette poster, you'll see what I believe to be a chair and a clock. I think. I have no idea what I'm looking at. You can push the chair underneath the clock and the pendulum of the clock will fall. You can then collect the pendulum. You will then get kicked out of the night back to the title screen. Clicking on the red box again will show the statue once more. You can then take the pendulum and place it into the stomach of the statue. Seriously, don't read into this too much. This is some fucked up Aoni type puzzle. Don't read into it, just accept it. After completing night 3, if you click the red box again, you'll get a cutscene. In it, you'll see clouds parting in the sky and a code appears behind them, along with the text,
the safe. Then you can go into your Tycoon, and instead of typing Tycoon into the directory, you can type Clown, which will start up a remake of the Clown minigame from Pizzeria Simulator. You can also play the Ball Pit minigame and Midnight Motorist. As I'm sure you could have guessed, the Midnight Motorist minigame actually serves some sort of importance. This minigame plays a lot differently than the original. It's a text-based adventure rather than a side-scroller. In it, you can walk around a forest and look at trees, something you all have never done before. Searching some of the trees, you can find a pendant. Walking to a lake, you can find an old man fishing. This person is who I assume to be Old Man Consequences. If you talk to him, he'll tell you the story of a girl who found a rabbit. The rabbit eventually dies and her father gets her to bury it. Later, she digs up the corpse only to find that the rabbit's fur had turned yellow. Oh my god, guys! Like Spring Bonnie, do you get it? Can you fucking believe it? Oh my god, I'm gonna bounce up and down, dropping my cheeks and testicles all over my desk! Oh yeah, you can also give the old man the pendant you found and he'll say that it belonged to her. Looking in some more trees, you can find blood-stained glasses. If you bring them to a man by a house, he'll tell you that they were your brothers. After beating Night 4, you should be able to buy the safe item from the Tycoon. We'll get to that later. Clicking on it will prompt you to type in a code. Typing in the code we saw in the cutscene earlier will open the safe, revealing a picture of a locked gate inside. After buying everything else in the Tycoon section, if you load the original version of the Tycoon and click the logo, you'll be sent to the gate. If you've done everything correctly, clicking on it will spawn you onto a boat. On the boat, you're told a story. Once again, I assume this story is being told by Old Man Consequences. He tells the story of Charlotte, Henry's daughter, the girl who was pushed outside of the pizzeria in the rain and left outside where she was later found dead. The story is abruptly ended by the line, "She isn't there anymore, Henry." Finally, if you've done everything properly and at the right times, when you enter Night 5, the puppet will be present, likely being the reason Lefty isn't there. The puppet acts as this game's final boss. So let's quickly go over her mechanics. The puppet can appear in any of your 2 doors. When she does, simply close the doors and she'll go away. Additionally, she will play a laughing sound cue. When she does, you must find her on the cameras and stare at her until she leaves. And as far as I'm aware, that's all that she does throughout this night. That may not seem like a huge issue, but of course, when paired with everything else and the bullshit buttfuck wombo combo butt bang strategy at the same time, this can be a very stressful night. But if you manage to beat it, you'll get one last cutscene. Michael Afton, alone in the suffocating darkness. He turns his lighter on, only to see the yellow bear, his own brother, staring back at him. Unable to look away, eventually even his brother leaves, leaving Michael truly alone. Knowing there's nothing left that he can do, Michael sets the building ablaze, killing himself while also allowing the souls, his brother, and Charlotte to rest. And with that, Banshee comes to a close. But hold up! Want to hear something awesome? If you remember, I said you have to get the safe in order to get the true ending. Well, I was chatting with the owner of the FNAF fan game wiki, City, and he told me that it is literally impossible to get the safe on your first playthrough, as it isn't possible to get enough experience to get to level 5. Since your Tycoon save and your game save are separate from each other, you can restart the main game and still save your Tycoon as it was, making it possible to reach level 5 and buy the safe on the second playthrough. I personally think this is one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. Forcing someone to play through the entirety of the game twice to get an ending is insane. Yes, I'm aware New Game Plus is a thing, and yes, I hate New Game Plus as well. But aside from that, this game is truly fantastic. From the visuals, to the gameplay, to the atmosphere, and of course, the amazing retelling of the FNAF 6 story, I think it is easily one of the best FNAF games of recent times, if not ever. Easy S-tier game, and I would highly recommend it. This game does such a perfect job of bringing the fear to this series that I feel it really needs. The story of Five Nights at Freddy's is grim, and the game should amplify that, not take away from it. Recently, I've been covering a lot of very well-known fan games on this channel. Five Nights at Candy's, Pop Goes, and Animatronic Memories are probably names you're all familiar with. Recently, I've been looking for a FNAF game to cover that I personally had never heard of, and today I've definitely found one. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's super weird, but however, it does have its charm and an amazing story. So let's waste no time and hop right into Tales of the Bunnyman. Tales of the Bunnyman opens with a cutscene that reminds me a lot of the old official Five Nights at Freddy's trailers, specifically Five Nights at Freddy's 2. We get several shots of the pizzeria interlaced with pieces of dialogue explaining the exposition of the story. We play as a man named Vincent Baldwin, who we later learn used to be a night guard and is one of the missing children's fathers, the father of Cassidy. We're entering the building to do some investigating and find out where our missing child went. And with our motive in mind, we're safe to head into Night 1 and start talking about what this game really has to offer. Night 1 introduces two characters, but before I start talking about them, I want to talk about the office itself. In our office, the first thing I want to get out of the way is this picture. I don't know who this is. I checked the wiki and couldn't figure out who this is. That's it. I just don't know who this is. Anyways, on to something actually important. The coolest thing I noticed about this office is that there are actually two rooms that we can move between, the typical office room and the boiler room. I'll talk more about the boiler room later when it becomes important. The door to the boiler room can be held shut, as animatronics will actually have to travel through it in order to get to your office. The only other things in our office is our camera system and a giant gift box. We can hide inside of this gift box to be able to protect ourselves from the first major threat of this night, Foxy. Foxy behaves pretty much exactly the same as in Five Nights at Freddy's 1. He starts on Pirate's Cove and makes his way through some phases before attacking. However, something unique about Foxy is he actually has two completely different attacks he can perform, each of which requires you to do something completely different to counteract him. The first attack he has is pretty simple. After he leaves Pirate's Cove, he will charge towards your office. When he does, you'll have to quickly jump inside the present until you hear him run away, after which you can jump back out and continue. His other attack is unfortunately a mechanic I've grown to dislike more and more as I play FNAF games. After leaving Pirate's Cove, Foxy has a chance to appear randomly on one of your cameras. When he does, all you have to do is find him and stare at him until he goes back to Pirate's Cove. This is mainly a me thing, but I've personally grown tired of the find them on the cameras mechanic. Yes, I do play Five Nights at Freddy's for a living, so yes, I'm going to see repeated mechanics a lot. Most sane people don't play as much Five Nights at Freddy's as I do, so most people won't find this mechanic to be that big of a deal, but hey, at least it's not a stupid fucking music box mechanic. We'll talk about that later. The only other threat introduced on this night is Bonnie. Bonnie is incredibly simple in how he works, as is typical in most FNAF games that feature him. Bonnie will make his way through the building and to your office. Afterwards, you'll be able to hear him at your door. You'll need to quickly go up to the door and hold it shut until you hear him leave like Five Nights at Freddy's 4. When you do, you'll know it's safe to reopen the door and continue the night. Very basic. That's just how we like Bonnie, isn't it, guys? Right? You like it when Bonnie's basic, right? You wouldn't want Bonnie to just hot bottom right into your office and start fingering you, would you? Freak. And with that, we can move on to the post-night 1 minigame. Here's where we get to talking a lot about how cool this game really is. This game does narrative storytelling in a different way than any other FNAF game I've ever seen. Instead of an 8-bit minigame or a slideshow lore dump, Tales of the Bunnyman turns into a visual novel during the post-night sections, having you play in the perspective of a different character each night. I think this is actually super cool. While yes, you may think that it looks straight out of a My Hero Academia DeviantArt fan page, it is very clear that an amazing amount of care and effort went into these post-night sections, and that cannot go unnoticed. Before I really start talking about the lore of this game, I need to make it incredibly clear that there was so much poured into this story. There's so many details that I could point out that would make this video quite literally take hours to complete. And while I'd love to be able to talk about all of it, I don't have the confidence in myself to do so, and to be able to portray it in the way that it rightfully deserves. I'll be going over what happens in the story, but I won't be diving into every single minute detail, and I apologize if you were hoping that I would. Anyways, in this minigame, we play in the perspective of Jeremy Jr. Fitzgerald. After hanging out with his friends at Freddy Fazbear's, he notices that his mom has not yet come to pick him up. After waiting an extended period of time, he decides to just watch the performance on stage. Hearing a strange whistling coming from backstage, he enters to investigate, only to abruptly get abducted and murdered by the Bunny Man, going on to possess Bonnie. I honestly think that these post-night minigames are a breath of fresh air in this genre. I've never seen anything like it before, and I'd love to see more FNAF games try to do something new like this to tell their story. But now it's time for us to move on to Night 2. Night 2 only introduces one new threat, that being Chica. Chica does exactly what you'd expect her to do, and no, I don't mean eating until she pops like a balloon. What I really mean is moving through the cameras and then going to your office. Oh my fucking god, that is gross. Yuck. Fucking yuck, bro. She does go through one additional camera compared to Bonnie, making you see her less often than him, but other than that, she's exactly the same as Bonnie. I'll also use this night to talk about the only thing I dislike about this game. The mouse. Oh my god, this mouse is atrocious. Oh no, this mouse is really bad. If you're at all familiar with my channel, you'll already know that the way the mouse works is always something I'll have a problem with when fan games try to switch it up. In most FNAF games, when you move your mouse to the side of the screen will scroll in that direction until it hits the end of your office. That makes sense, and this is good. Tales of the Bunny Man instead decided to take a route similar to Sister Location. If you are to move your mouse to one side of the screen in Tales of the Bunny Man, your mouse won't follow the moving office. Instead, the game will keep track of its simulated X and Y positions in the office. And while this may sound super cool, in practice, it leads to you having to move your mouse all the way across your desk or increasing your mouse's sensitivity to be able to make up for it. Is this nitpicky? Yes. But I am giving my opinion on a game, so I think it's important to talk about things that I notice, especially when it's the main interaction mechanic in the entire game. Anyways, moving on to the post-Night 2 minigame, where we play in the perspective of Susie Sutherland. The group of friends were supposed to play the newly installed arcade game, Pop Goes vs. the Machinist? 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 I don't know. Instead, she decides to split up from the group to go look for Bonnie. Walking around the building, we can talk to a kid named Ollie, who mentions something about Bonnie acting weird recently. Given the timeline of the events this game has, I'm fairly certain that this cutscene is taking place 16 days after Jeremy's disappearance. So I think it's safe to say that Jeremy at this point in time is already inside of the Bonnie costume. During this minigame is when Susie can also find a VHS tape relating to Edwin Murray. If you couldn't already tell, this game's story is heavily entwined with the official FNAF games. Later, Susie heads over to Pirate's Cove to get a peek at Foxy, getting startled by William inside of the Spring Bonnie suit. It's at this point I need to mention two things. One, why is this specific camera in the post-nights a 3D render instead of the usual 2D drawing? And two, why is William the only character in the entire game to have voice acting? Mr. Afton, don't scare me like that.
Now, what's a missy like you doing snooping around a pirate's property?
Why is he voice acting? I'm much more curious about my second question. I was a little caught off guard when I first heard him speak, since, again, nobody in the game thus far ever has. But regardless, that's not very important. After a brief, uncomfortable conversation with Afton, we meet up with our friends again at the new arcade machine, and as we play the game, we're seen being stalked by the Bunny Man. If you couldn't already guess, Susie Sutherland goes on to possess Chica. Now it's time to talk about Night 3, which introduces one new threat, Freddy and the Marionette. Now, pause. Let's just stop for a moment and talk about Freddy first, okay? Freddy, like Foxy, has two different attacks. We'll talk about the more simple one first. Freddy will make his way through the cameras and enter your boiler room. The reason he does so is to attempt to cut the power, because doing so will allow for the marionette to come spread your buns and lick up your crack. To prevent this from happening, we will have to enter the boiler room and hold our flashlight on his face, causing him to bug out and leave the boiler room. However, before he does, we actually get to see him creepily tilt his body. Such a small detail, but I actually really like it. Now we can talk about the other mechanic Freddy has that I originally thought was going to make me want to skin an elephant. As previously mentioned, it's clear that Freddy wants to assist in helping the marionette grope us. So, Freddy's other attack is him going to the music box to fuck up the marionette's sleep schedule. Fun fact, I used to work a graveyard shift at a news station, and let me tell you, you don't want to fuck with nobody's sleep schedule, bro. So, in order to save the marionette's sanity, we must remotely shut down the music box before Freddy can finish. Moving on to the Night 3 Post-9 minigame, we play in the perspective of Fritz Smith II. Let me tell you, this guy is a big fan of Foxy. So much so that he insists on constantly talking like a pirate, something that made me want to eat my own lungs throughout my playthrough because I was writhing in cringe. A.S. the worst one. It be fixin' to be jolly. What the fuck does that mean? Fritz leaves the group to go look for Foxy. Going to Pirate's Cove, he finds a decommissioned Foxy behind the curtains. Additionally, he finds a diary written by Henry. I guess for some reason, this is where Henry goes to vent, right next to the fucked up looking robot. A little weird, Henry, but you do you, boo. Inside of the diary, we read that Henry is struggling to cope with the loss of his daughter and his theory about Jeremy and Susie's disappearances having something to do with each other. Little did he know how right he truly was. Whilst continuing to read the diary, the bunny man appears behind him and drags him into the back room, all while taunting him, saying that he thought he was more interested in Foxy than Henry's diary. Fritz would go on to possess Foxy. Moving on to Night 4, we get to talk about a very odd threat, Balloon Boy. Yes, for some reason, Balloon Boy is in this game. Don't question it. I guess the developer of this game just hates fun. Balloon Boy isn't a very difficult threat to deal with, thankfully, instead serving more of an annoyance, which is very fitting for his character. Balloon Boy can only appear in 2 rooms in the entire game, the boiler room and your backstage camera. You'll have to listen out for a vent sound cue. When you hear it, you'll have to travel to the back room and find where Balloon Boy is, because, unlike Freddy, he has multiple different locations that he can stand in. Once you find Balloon Boy, just like Freddy, all you have to do is hold your flashlight on him until he goes away. I'm really not entirely sure why Balloon Boy exists in this game. I have yet to find any story reason for it either. Maybe it's just a popular character to put into the game, or maybe I'm just reading way too much into this. I'm not really sure. But hey, let's move on to the post-Night 4 minigame. In this minigame, we play as Gabriel Collins. Gabriel sneaks into Freddy Fazbear's Pizza because he has a hunch that his missing friends are still inside. Once he enters, he searches the location, eventually discovering the marionette. They quickly become friends and begin exploring the establishment together. Eventually, they stumble across Michael and William Afton. William is trying to convince Michael to work as a performer, playing the character of Bonnie. But before we can hear anything else, William spots us. He chases us through the building, and the marionette hides us in its gift box. However, unfortunately for Gabriel, William finds him anyway and is knocked out. He wakes up inside of the Freddy Fazbear costume, watching William Afton jump around the dining room, mocking him through his last breaths. Gabriel would then go on to possess Freddy. This is easily one of the most fucked up cutscenes throughout the entire game. I'm no edgelord, as some people seem to think I am, but I really enjoy when games show us the depraved things that the villains do. I and many others don't want to just hear about things happening, we want to see them as well. Of course, I don't think we all want to literally see the children getting murdered, but I think showing off the situations in the way that Tales of the Bunnyman does is incredibly interesting. Next, we get to move on to Night 5, the final main night in Tales of the Bunnyman. This night adds Fredbear, an interesting but fitting final character choice. Fredbear acts as an everything character, being able to take on the role of every animatronic besides Balloon Boy and Foxy. However, unlike most everything nights that take place in other FNAF games, Fredbear is active alongside each other animatronic, adding one more layer of stress to the nights. Again, he doesn't have any unique mechanics by himself, but this time I'm honestly okay with that, only because the other characters are still active. It's at this point I want to bring up something I should have brought up a long time ago: the character designs. From what I've seen, the community seems to be pretty split on their opinions of these character designs. A lot of people love them and think that in combination with the grungy environment, it makes them look very creepy. However, on the other hand, I've seen plenty of people who think that the designs look unprofessional and seemingly come out of a game that came out many years ago. I personally have no problems with the character designs. I think they look creepy and uncomfortable. However, I do think that the texturing on the characters does look a bit odd, but nothing that I feel takes away from the immersion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Also, since I'm being a little meta right now, go subscribe to my new channel, Dexter Gray. I cover non-FNAF horror games over there, and we have a lot of fun. Anyways, moving on to the final post-night minigame where we play in the perspective of Cassandra Baldwin, or better known, Cassidy. Now, noticing that she's the only member of her friend group that hasn't gone missing, she vows to figure out what happened to them and find where they all disappeared to. Entering the back room, she finds a Fredbear plushie which, throughout the game, has been shown to be able to teleport on its own, and yet, for some reason, nobody felt like that was weird at all. This is really the only gripe I have with this story, the plushie teleporting around, and multiple people know about this, yet nobody is at all a little concerned about it. On top of that, it is literally never once elaborated on or explained why this happens. I can't even draw a conclusion because there's quite literally no reason, but let's try to put that behind us for a moment and continue. We do know that the plushie is being used by Afton to lure Cassidy into the back room. Now pause. I know I just said there's literally no reason given as to why it's teleporting, and you may be questioning why I said that even though I just stated that William was using it to lure Cassidy. However, that still doesn't explain how it was fucking teleporting, and still doesn't explain why nobody gave that a second thought. Anyways, Cassidy is successfully lured into the back room. Scared, Cassidy runs out of the pizzeria and later returns for a Halloween party. Baka! I know that's not what that says, I'm sorry. As she explores, she's found by the bunny man who presumably knocks her out after stating, "You forgot me." She awakens to find herself inside of the Fredbear costume. William explains that originally he planned to save the Fredbear costume for Henry, but decided to use it for Cassidy instead. During their conversation, it's revealed that Vincent, the character that we've been playing as in the night sections, according to William, is a terrible night guard, which would technically leave him responsible for not noticing the children's disappearances on the camera, since every action that William had been taking was done under the constant surveillance of those cameras, including what's happening right now in front of us. This would give us a perfect reason as to why he's returning to the restaurant now to find his daughter, because he didn't watch her like he was supposed to. He never saw what happened. Afterwards, we get one last cutscene. Vincent walks up to the Fredbear animatronic and realizes it's his daughter. However, he trips and falls, which leads to him getting killed by his own daughter, and Tales of the Bunny Man abruptly comes to a close. Almost. There's actually one more thing to talk about, that being Night 6, or as this game calls it, the epilogue. In it, after completing the final challenge, which is just a harder version of Night 5, we see the line, "He finally found the suit that will become his tomb, the last lingering piece of his soul. A good song never dies." With that, we get to watch William's springlock failure and onlook as he bleeds out. We're shown that Vincent, our character, was found dead inside of Freddy Fazbear's, and several news outlets labeled him as the reason the kids were murdered. I can't lie to you guys, I'm really eager to talk about this story, since after reading into it, I actually think it's really good, and it's clear that a bunch of effort was put into it. But like I said previously, I'm just not confident in my abilities to do it for myself. I've tossed around the idea of just reading the highly detailed explanation on the wiki that was written by somebody that was far more talented than I am, but I've decided against doing that since I don't want to come off as lazy and uninspired. And as much as I hate saying this, I'd highly recommend you go to the wiki and read up on it. It's actually such an amazingly well-written story, and I think it might just be one of the best takes on the official FNAF story I've ever seen. Overall, I think Tales of the Bunnyman is an enjoyable experience. The post-night minigames are interesting, and the story is fantastic and told in a way that isn't overtly confusing like most FNAF games like to be. However, I do think that the actual gameplay mechanics are pretty lackluster. Not only does each character not really have synergy with one another, this game is also just too easy. Throughout the nights, it never really feels like the characters are becoming more aggressive, which tends to lead to boring nights where you're just waiting for the much more enjoyable minigame sections.
What makes a game difficult? Is it puzzles, bosses, nerve control, or a mixture of all of those things? I think almost any answer to that question is a valid one. However, I think there's something all players, especially Five Nights at Freddy's players, can agree does not make a game difficult: RNG. Standing for random number generation, RNG is basically just when the game decides to go, and make something happen in the game at complete random with no thoughts of balancing or user experience whatsoever. In a lot of games, RNG can be a good thing and add to the overall experience, whether that be contributing to grinding for a really good gear in a dungeon of an MMO, or contributing to a loot box if you're a degenerate and play Hoyoverse games. But something I think FNAF players can agree on is that RNG is almost never a good thing, and the game we'll be diving into today implements it in some of the worst ways of all time. Join me as we dive into the world of the Tubbyland Archives. The Tubbyland Archives begins with a cutscene. The camera pans around the building, showing the various rooms, and we listen to a quick phone call from the CEO of the company we will soon be working for. He tells us that we've gotten the job and that we'll meet with a guy named Joey, and he'll be teaching us what we need to do. The camera pans past two of the antagonists we will soon be introduced to, and oh my lord, do I need to talk about how awesome this game looks. These characters look terrifying. I love them, and I honestly feel like this game's menu screen is one of the best FNAF menu screens I've ever seen. The way the characters shake as they reach out for you, mixed with the unsettling background music, provides a very uncomfortable feel, which I think fits great into a FNAF game. Anyways, moving on to night one, we're introduced to who I can only assume to be Joey. However, through in-game subtitles, we can see the game refers to him as 03. Not really sure why. The night one phone call is just about as uneventful as I'm sure you could have guessed. 03 explains the basics, and not much lore is mentioned at all. 03 tells us that the guy that worked before us was named Evan, but other than that, not much else is revealed. And while yes, I could describe to you how he describes what our job is, but it's kind of my job to tell you what our job is, so let's do that. There is only one threat that is activated on night one, that threat being Poe. For those of you who are grown adults and don't know anything about the Teletubbies, Poe is the red one. However, before we can actually talk about Poe, we should talk about the general tools we have at our disposal. Obviously, we have cameras, but the cameras in this game have 3 unique functions. Okay, 1 unique function. I've seen the other 2, I'm just trying to be nice because apparently I'm way too negative in these reviews. Let's go over the 2 non-unique functions first. To start, we have our camera flashlight. Just like FNAF 2, it lights the camera up. Who would have imagined? Wow. However, the flashlight battery in this game that's displayed in the top corner of the camera actually goes down pretty fast. So that's why in my playthrough, which you can see on my second channel, Dexter Black, it's very common for you to see me flash the light on a camera for a fraction of a second. Since as you play this game, you'll learn where to look for each of the animatronics, a super brief flash should really be all you need. The next familiar mechanic is an audio lure, except unlike most audio lures, it won't make you want to kill yourself by only working a handful of times before forcing you to stare at a reboot monitor for 300 years. I'll explain how the audio lure mechanic works when it becomes relevant. Before that, let's talk about the last mechanic in the cameras. The reboot? The shock. I don't really know what to call it. There's a button on the cameras that allows you to remotely turn off and on said camera. There's almost never a reason to turn a camera off, so I'm just gonna pretend like that doesn't even exist. But turning a camera on is very important because of one main mechanic this game has that just makes me smile from ear to ear. You see, that joke was funny because I lied. In the top corner of the screen, you'll also see a camera stability percentage. Throughout the night, this number will decrease, and each camera has its own dedicated percentage. When the percentage reaches 0, that camera will automatically shut off, and you'll have to go to said camera and turn it back on. This mechanic is in no way annoying by itself, but when mixed with a certain dickhead we'll talk about later, this will quickly become one of the main things in this game that makes you want to detonate a flash grenade next to an infant. You can also hide behind some curtains in your office, but that won't become necessary until a later night. Now, pivoting to talking about Poe. Something I'll hand to this game is that it does a really good job at making every character be a constant thorn in your side. No character can be forgotten about. No character can you just let your brain go on autopilot to deal with. You constantly have to be aware of each character, which is something I think is a very good thing in a FNAF game. Poe will do what most robots in FNAF games tend to do, wander around the building and make their way to your office. Something you'll notice about a lot of characters in this game is their ease of ability to juke you. Unlike most FNAF games where each character usually only has one main form of attack, most of the characters in the Tubbyland archives can attack both of the doors in your office. And because of the way the building is set up, there are multiple opportunities for the characters to swap which side they're going to attack on, making it even more important for you to constantly be monitoring all of them. Poe is the only character in this game that is affected by the audio lore, thankfully. However, there is a very big problem with Poe that I will bring up towards the end of this video, but for now, Poe pretty much is just Springtrap. Don't let her get to your doors or she'll insert herself inside of you, and you can only lure her into rooms she's adjacent to. Ooh, I don't like that. Call it back this way, bro. Come here, please! Poe by herself is not a formidable foe, but will likely become the character you forget about the most later down the line. Of course, it wouldn't be a FNAF game without post-night minigames where all you do is walk around, now would it? Rest assured, Tubbyland Archives has those as well. However, there is something I want to mention about these minigames. The way they control is honestly really satisfying. The camera moves with the player, but it doesn't lock to them. It glides around their movement, which leads to a super satisfying feel. Not only that, but the art doesn't have that typical purposeful dogshit look to it. It looks like this could actually be a game inside of an arcade machine, and I think that's great. But what happens in the first minigame? Well, to start, we play as the green Teletubby, Dipsy. We're told to find Nunu, and once again, for those of you that know nothing about the Teletubbies, Nunu is this fucking vacuum that's alive. Or something. After wandering around the building, we find Nunu in a closet and his eyes glow red, which means he's evil because duh, that's what red means. And we're told that Nunu was sleeping. Duh, that's why his eyes were closed, you moron. I can't believe the game is having to explain this to you. On night 2, we get another call from O3. He explains not a whole lot, basically just goes over the 2 new animatronics, but I feel like I can do a hell of a lot better than he can. He does bring up Nunu, the vacuum cleaner, and explains that the CEO worked on building him himself. He always told the workers to stay away from it because it was too dangerous. I find that a bit odd, and so does O3, but we're gonna not question it. It's just FNAF things, I suppose, right? Anyways, on to the 2 threats this night introduces, the previously mentioned Nunu and the yellow Teletubby, Lala. Lala is the real main antagonist of this game, at least she feels like it, as she is the character that without a doubt will require the majority of your attention throughout this game, and is the first major occurrence of painfully AIDS RNG throughout this experience. Lala is one of the few characters that can be seen on the cameras without the use of the flashlight since her eyes glow. She does the same thing that Poe does. She can attack both doors and has multiple points throughout the cameras where she can swap sides and fuck your day up. Generally, her mechanic is easy. Lala will never move backwards, so once she's at the entrance of one of your doors on the cameras, if you later check and she is no longer there, then you know she's about to attack you. And when she is, all you have to do is hide behind the curtains and she'll jump into the office to look for you. Yes. Yo, I would not want those things to grip my hips. I ain't not gonna lie. Them big fucking oven mitt hands, bro.
But she does have the mind of a toddler and will quickly forget why she wandered into the office in the first place and promptly leave. Where Lala becomes incredibly ass-clenchingly AIDS is when we start to talk about what I'm going to call her final bait and switch. The two final cameras she will appear on before attacking are camera 1A and camera 1B. However, there is a camera in between that can serve as one final point for Lala to switch sides, that being camera 2A, the worst fucking camera in the whole game. When Lala is on either of her two kill cameras, when she has a successful movement opportunity, she will do one of two things. One, she'll just prepare to enter your office, wherein you'll need to hide behind the curtains, or she can do the much more frustrating option, move into the bait and switch camera. When she's in this camera, she obviously won't be able to enter your office. However, when comparing this switch camera to the other one, it becomes a lot more infuriating. The other two switch cameras are 4A and 1B. This is the only other point in the cameras where the characters can switch attack sides. However, the difference between these cameras and the bait and switch cameras is that the bait and switch cameras have a camera in between. And because of this, when Lala is in the bait and switch camera and has a successful movement opportunity, she can enter any of the two kill cameras, even if it's the kill camera she just came from. This alone isn't a huge problem, but when we get into later nights and everyone is more aggressive and there's more characters active, in most cases, you would almost always rather have Lala just move into her attack phase so that she'll reset to camera 5A and you can focus on someone else for a bit. However, there will be many occurrences where Lala will just jump between her bait and switch cameras, leading to you need to spend way more time on her than you ever should have, which will end up getting you killed by either Poe or another character I'll mention later in the long run. The other character this night adds is the previously mentioned Nunu. Nunu, thankfully, isn't a normal attacking character. Nunu is actually in the office with you, and you can see him behind the curtains you go to hide in. He's just a preventative measure to stop you from hiding in the curtains all night. If you stay there for too long, he'll kill you. Pretty simple sugar. After beating night 2, we're tossed into another mini-game segment, this time playing as Poe. Once again, we have to go find Nunu. After a bit of exploring, we find him getting his clanker ass to work, filling up the custard machine to make some bomb-ass desserts that I personally will never eat because I'm not really a sugar type of guy. Moving on to night 3, we get yet another phone call from O3. He tells us that everyone who works in this building never feels like they're alone when they enter the building, and no shit, there are a bunch of murder robots always trying to fornicate with them, so that checks out. O3 expresses that he will be trying to look through some of the files later on to figure out what's going on, and if I were to guess, that's not gonna bode well for him. O3 also mentions another Teletubby, and of course, that character is the new threat on this night, that being the purple Teletubby, Tinky Winky. Tinky Winky is probably the least frustrating character throughout this whole game. Same shit as every other character. Go to your office, juke you along the way. Except the way to deal with Tinky Winky is different. We're told that he doesn't like high-frequency noises. Well, luckily for us, the flashlight on our cameras just so happens to make that correct frequency of noise to piss him off. He also makes a very noticeable sound cue on whichever camera he's on. So if he's ever in the wrong place, just hold the light on him and he'll move backwards. No problem whatsoever. The post-night 3 minigame has us play as Lala. Once more, we're tasked with finding Nunu. Spoiler alert, this is what we're gonna have to do in each of the minigame segments. After some searching, we find him taking out the trash. However, as I'm sure you could already see because you have eyes, the trash he's taking out definitely looks like flesh and blood, so that's just awesome now, isn't it? Night 4 gives us my favorite phone call in this entire game. Something I really need to point out is how amazing the voice actors in this game really did. The acting is nothing short of amazing. It never sounds like the characters are acting, it always just sounds so real.
And it turns out I'm not crazy. There's something going on around here, and it's not good. I don't really know how much I can say over the phone. I mean, who knows who's listening? But I think I might be onto something. This whole company goes way deeper than I ever thought.
And that's what I think all good acting should be. You shouldn't even think that the characters are actors, just that they're characters. and I think this game does an almost perfect job at that. Moving on to what's actually said, O3 did some digging and explained that the entire company goes way deeper than he expected. He found some things that he probably wasn't supposed to see, but he never gets into explaining what. Before he does, the CEO comes to his office. They have a brief yet uncanny conversation. The CEO knows that someone had been looking at the company documents, and it's clear that he thinks O3 did it, which, to be fair, he did. O3 denies ever doing so because, of course, why would he admit that? And the CEO says that he's got his eyes on him. He asks O3 to come in the next night to help look for some of the documents, and O3, while confused as to why, agrees anyways. The CEO leaves the office and O3 quickly hangs up the phone. This night also introduces the final threat in this game, Dipsy. Dipsy is another character that you won't really have to focus on all too much. Dipsy will appear in your front office door. He has a few phases he can move through before you see him in his main attack phase, where he's fully leaned into your office. When you see him like this, all you have to do is hide. A very faint sound cue will play when he leaves, and you'll be able to come back out and continue. Not a very difficult character to deal with, but a character that does force you to pull the camera down every once in a while. And in a game where the camera is easily the most important tool, this isn't something you're gonna want to be doing very often. This is also the night where you'll really start to notice how difficult this game really is. The characters really start to move quickly on night 4, and the pressure present and nerve control required really starts to stand out. In the comments of my first episode of this game, which you can watch over on my second channel, Dexter Black, I got several comments warning me about how hard this game really is, and upon reaching night 4, I finally really started to feel it. But nothing could prepare me for the complete bullshit I was about to go through come night 5. But before we can talk about night 5, we need to talk about the post-night 4 minigame. In it, we play as Tinky Winky and find Nunu cleaning up a spill, as the game puts it. This spill very clearly is blood, and I have my suspicions as to whose blood it could be, but I'll explain my thought process after we talk about night 5. Night 5's phone call is a doozy, to say the least. O3 explains that the CEO set him up. He came in the night the CEO asked and walked right into a death trap. He mentioned he found a box in a party room that smelled terrible. He found several documents. Reading them revealed everything. He explains that the entire building and business we're in now is a cover-up. But before he can tell us more, Nunu finds him and kills him in what I can only describe as one of the most uncomfortable phone calls I've ever heard. Shit. Nunu, no. Oh, are the... Okay, that was a pretty cool fucking phone call, dude. I can't even lie. That was actually badass. And I can only assume he is the owner of the blood that Nunu was cleaning up in the post-night 4 minigame. But now we get the displeasure of talking about night 5. Single-handedly, one of the most infuriating gameplay experiences I've ever had in my entire life. This is where the RNG gets atrocious, and where I find this game's biggest asshole, Poe. As I've already mentioned, Poe acts very similarly to Springtrap in FNAF 3, and if you know anything about FNAF 3, then you know the worst thing about it is the dreaded 1 in 7. For those of you who have played FNAF 3, that phrase probably just sent chills down the back of your spines. 1 in 7 refers to the 1 in 7 chance Springtrap has to completely fucking ignore your audio lure, and is single-handedly the reason why FNAF 3 is even as hard as it is, as it takes a system that would be built around skill and turns it into a game of, is Springtrap gonna fuck you or not? This is exactly what Poe does. At least, I'm pretty sure, is what she does. There's no official documentation about her AI, and as far as I'm aware, there's no decompiling of this game to double check. But I'm almost positive she has the same mechanic. Maybe it isn't 1 in 7, but it's almost 100% 1 in something. Because if it's not a 1 in something, then that means that Poe moves around the camera so quickly that your audio lure doesn't even matter. I tried my absolute hardest, but I could not for the life of me beat Night 5. I gave up, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. If my theory of Poe ignoring some of the sound cues is correct, then fuck trying to beat that night and just waiting for luck to be on my side. The time you have to wait to use the audio lure after using it is way fucking longer than in FNAF 3. And sure, you never have to reboot it, but that doesn't really matter when Poe moves at the fucking speed of the goddamn Roadrunner. Seriously, go watch my Night 5 playthrough on my second channel, Dexter Black. It's almost laughable how quickly Poe gets to my office despite me using the audio lures at every single opportunity that I could. You could also just watch to see some salt since there's plenty of that, but like, goddamn, this night is hard. This game is fucking hard. I should have listened, but I was thinking, well, how hard could it possibly be? And the answer to that question is, I don't know. It's impossible to tell how hard the game is because the skill ceiling is capped by how lucky you get. So I don't even know how difficulty could be measured. But I need to relax a bit. Sure, I wasn't able to beat this game, but I know there are some people out there who were able to. And because of those people, indie fuel, that I'm able to finish talking about this game. So congratulations to all of you who put yourself through this horseshit torment. I appreciate you. The post-Night 5 minigame actually takes place before the Night 4 minigame. We play as Tinky Winky once again and actually get to see who, once again, I can only assume to be 03, dragging himself out of a room before all of the animatronics hold him down as Nunu kills him and he's left to die on the floor alone with no one to ever come and help him. We get our check for the week, but before we decide to piss off forever, our character begins to speak to himself. He wants to go back for one more night, to see if 03 is still alive, and if he isn't, he wants to get the documents that 03 mentioned so that his death wouldn't be in vain. Personally, if it was me, I don't care if 03 was my brother. He's dead as disco, and there would be no way in fuck I'd be going back there in a million years. But Parker, our player's name, decides to, and we get to jump into Night 6, an experience I never got to see for myself, and I'm glad I didn't. As far as I'm aware, nothing new was added to Night 6, just being a more difficult, more RNG-based fuckfest of a night, but after completing it, we move on to the post-Night 6 minigame. This minigame is actually a minigame, not just a walk-around simulator. In this minigame, we have to find 10 of the documents in the basement, all while the animatronics patrolling you are trying to find us. If at any point they see you, you're dead because they're much faster than you are. So you have to strategically hide by staring at a fucking wall every once in a while whilst they pass, and eventually escape the building. I obviously never did this because I couldn't even beat Night 5, let alone Night 6, but even just watching somebody else complete this minigame, even this minigame looks really fucking hard. So I'm grateful that I never had to do it. But that's all Tubbyland's Archives Act 1 has to offer. Yes, I did say Act 1, which would imply that there are more on the way. In fact, Act 2 does actually have a Game Jolt page, but with no updates on said page for over 2 years, who's to say if it will ever actually come out or not? I personally really hope it does, because the story of this game actually seems intriguing to me, which is odd for a FNAF game. Overall, the Tubbyland Archives can prove to be an incredibly frustrating, luck-stricken experience. However, I don't think that can fully take away from how amazing this game both looks and how it is mechanically if you can put aside the 2 major RNG points that it has. The Five Nights at Freddy's formula. Arguably what defines a FNAF game in the genre of a FNAF game. You're stuck in a small space, you can't move, and several threats are trying to eliminate you as you use a small amount of tools to defend yourself for an arbitrary amount of time. This, in a nutshell, is Five Nights at Freddy's as a genre. However, there are some Five Nights at Freddy's fan games that don't follow this formula, and if it wasn't for the use of the characters from the original game, you would have no idea that they were even FNAF games to begin with. And maybe you can think of a few games like this. The game I'll be covering today is another one of those games. A game so unique, so good, that if it didn't use official FNAF characters, it could easily be its own fantastic survival horror experience. So sit back, strap in, and join me today as we cover Fredbear and Friends Reboot. You can honestly think about Fredbear and Friends Reboot as more of an Outlast, Resident Evil, or Poppy Playtime style game, purely in terms of how it plays. It's a story-based, free-roam survival horror game, except it uses characters and settings from the Five Nights at Freddy's universe, and it's honestly super cool. We play as a guy named Thomas. When this game takes place, the Fredbear and Friends restaurant had been closed for over 26 years, and together with our friends Chris, Ashley, and Richard, they all decided it'd be a great idea to do some urban exploring in the now abandoned building, not knowing that they were about to walk into a sick and sadistic death trap, the likes of which they'd never experienced before. We drive to the restaurant where all of our friends are waiting and head inside to find them. We all talk about what the plan is, and it seems like they don't even fucking have one. So like, why are we even here? No matter, we decide to all split up like Scooby and the gang to explore faster, something I would never agree to do because this building is so dark I can barely see 10 feet in front of me. So, to solve the darkness problem, Richard finds the power room as we enter the office of the building. Successfully turning the power on, I ask the question, is it even possible for a building 26 years abandoned to even be able to have power? That's a genuine question, by the way. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but like, who's paying that bill? The city? I have no idea. After having our fun in the office, we meet back up with our bald friend Chris. I know being bald isn't a crucial plot point, but a plot point I found relevant to point out. Like, imagine being bald. Couldn't be me. I have luscious locks. Bald bitch, loser bitch, boy, loser bitch. Chris tells us he wants to continue exploring to find out more about this place, which I call bullshit on because this bald loser is sitting down and is actually not exploring a damn thing. Heading back to the office, we find 2 documents for Chris since he's too lazy to go look for himself. One of the documents mentions the animatronics acting up, and the other talks about an armed man in a purple suit. I wonder who that could possibly be. We go back to where Chris was, only to find him missing. After exploring around, we realize we can't find Richard or Ashley either. We hear a voice in the distance yelling to get away, and later hear what sounds like Richard getting attacked.
What the fuck?
We decide to say fuck our friends and run to the exit, only to find that the door is somehow locked. We decide we need to go hide in the office since there's a door we can close to keep ourselves safe. As we run down the hallway, we run into Chris. Relieved, we go to greet him, only to watch him get snatched from something hiding in the vent on the ceiling, pulling him up into the ceiling and tearing him apart.
Yeah, not this way though, not fucking that way, no we ain't.
We obviously turn around and go to the other entrance of the office since I'm not about to get ganked like Chris just did. As we go to the other hallway, we can hear loud metallic footsteps following behind us. We quickly hide under the desk and hope that whatever is following us is retarded. We watch as a crooked spring Bonnie limps through the office, unaware of our location. We come back up only to hear a ring of the phone on the desk. We answer the phone to be greeted by some douchebag using voice mod like those guys that go on Valorant to flirt with any female over the age of 10.
If you want to survive, listen very closely.
He tells us how to survive each of the 8 animatronics. The fucking 8 goddamn cock-sucking animatronics. My god, that is a lot. I'm not going to explain every single animatronic at the same time right now because that would be boring as fuck. And trust me, this phone call was also boring as fuck. The big thing that we're told is that Fredbear is scary, and he's the reason why one of the doors to the office is broken. So fantastic, we have a door that doesn't work. What exactly are we supposed to do? I have no idea. I have no direction whatsoever aside from let's go see if I can break the exit door down. But before we can try anything, we're forced to listen to a cutscene while there are 8 hungry robots whose mouths begin to water whenever they smell my gooch. During this cutscene, we're put into the perspective of a mechanic named Simon. We're told that we have to go into the Fredbear's building to fix some of the robots because the customers reported them to be acting aggressive. So we can gauge that this cutscene obviously takes place before the shutdown. After this cutscene, we're actually put into the perspective of this mechanic as we head inside the building to solve the problem at 5 in the morning because as an engineer, we're on call all the time, yet still get paid like dog shit and are still expected to just wake up and travel at any time, even for the smallest of reasons that could 100% wait until my fucking shift starts. But alright, Let's go, I guess. As we enter the building, we notice the animatronics are on for some reason, and they shouldn't be at night. We figure somebody just forgot to shut them off, so we go to the employees' room to flip the switch to power them off to take a look at them. After grabbing the key from the office and heading inside, we find that the power lever for the robots is actually already off, yet for some reason, the characters are still on. We decide to just manually shut them off to work on them instead, so we walk to the stage, reach up to turn off Spring Freddy, only to get that Soulja Boy cranked on us and get knocked the fuck out by a guy who I can only assume to be the guy we heard on the phone. We come back to playing as Thomas again, and are tasked with obviously finding a way to get the exit door unlocked. We find a key to the bathroom on the office shelf and head down the hall to go inside. Inside of the bathroom, we find a hammer that we hope we can use to break the lock on the exit door. However, as we exit the bathroom, we see the non-attractive, fat-ass version of Chica heading in our direction, so we quickly jump inside of one of the stalls to hide. We hold our breath as Chica passes by and quickly run out to the exit door. We break the handle to the door and open it, seeing the final exit door. We don't get far before Foxy jumps out at us for some fucking reason. This door was locked? Why the hell was Foxy on the other side of it? Oh well, what the fuck ever. It's a little bit more important right now that we run away from the murder robot behind us. We run back to the employee room and hide behind a shelf. Foxy walks inside, but before he can find us, he hears a noise coming from the door inside of the room. Opening it, he finds who I can only assume to be Richard and jumps him like he's in Detroit. We take this chance to book it back to the exit. As we run, we hear Richard getting torn apart, screaming. We get to the door just in time, and Jesus fucking Christ, the door is gone? What the fuck? Let's ignore the fact that this doesn't make sense, because I don't think I need to explain to you why a door disappearing doesn't make sense. We turn around to see a certain large twitching bear. He just screams in our face and disappears, clearly being a hallucination. We figure there's no better time than the present to find another exit. As we walk into the main party room, so does Spring Bonnie. And now's the time where I can talk about how he works. Spring Bonnie is as basic as it gets when it comes to a survival horror character. He patrols around the building, and if you get too close to him in his line of sight, he'll start chasing you, and he won't stop chasing you until he kills you. And there's also no chance you're going to outrun him. The only way to get him to stop chasing you without dying is to lure him to the side of the office with a door and close it. But you also really have to be careful with how you close this door, because it doesn't work how any normal FNAF door would. It only stays closed for about 2 seconds, so make sure you time this properly. Nope. Oh! I closed it! I fucking closed it! I fucking closed it! I fucking closed it! I'm dead. I'm dead as shit. If you do, Spring Bonnie should be teleported to a different room in the building. We maneuver our way around Spring Bonnie and eventually make it to the other exit of the building, only to find that the door is missing too. Isn't life just so awesome sometimes? It's at this moment we hear Richard scream, which confuses me because I thought Richard just got killed by Foxy. So if who we heard just now was Richard, then who did Foxy just kill? It couldn't have been Chris because we saw Chris get killed by the fucker in the vents. It also couldn't be Ashley because it was 100% the scream of a man. And it can't be the engineer because he entered the building in that cutscene 26 or more years ago. This is not important at all, so let's actually continue talking about what's happening, shall we? We head back to the office where we heard the scream, only to find nobody there. We figure for some reason we should go back to the employee room. Why? Ask Shitlips Thomas, because I can't figure out a good reason to go back there, but apparently he's the FNAF expert and not me. Before we can continue, we get another engineer cutscene. We're dragged into a back room and we overhear 2 people talking. Well, really only one person talking, because the other guy has his voice changer on so deep thinking it'll make the e-girls wet, so I really can't even hear him.
Why didn't you just kill him? Really? Dave, you know exactly what happened before.
The voice I can hear sounds suspiciously like the guy on the phone who called us here at 5 in the fucking morning. He tells voice changer guy that he should just kill us so we don't get away like the other engineer and spread the word about what they're doing. After not doing it, the phone guy decides to just do it himself, so he enters the room and stabs us to death. Fantastic. I really shouldn't have lived in Chicago. Everyone in Chicago gets stabbed. Going back to the employee room, we find the corpse of a police officer. Seeing that his radio had been taken, we now know that whoever is behind this really knows what they're doing. But we figure that because a police officer went missing, that other officers will be arriving at some point to look for him. So knowing all we have to do is survive, this game's most agonizing survival section finally begins. And I get to explain what all of the characters do in grueling detail, because they're all laid on us at the exact same time, and we're just supposed to remember what they all do from the 2-minute phone call we got 15 minutes ago. Hooray. Alright, well, the goal is easy. Just survive until 6 AM without getting found by any of the animatronics. Sounds simple enough. All we have to do is track all of their movements and learn their patterns, and then find a spot in the massive 3D environment where none of the characters ever have a line of sight to, right? Almost, but not really, because one main character. Bonnie. Bonnie is this game's way of preventing you from doing exactly that. On certain time intervals, Bonnie will emerge from the room where the puppet is. Yes, by the way, the puppet is in this game. Don't think too much about it. There are a lot of characters from a lot of different FNAF time periods in this game, so just shut up. Anyways, Bonnie will exit this room and make his way to the employee room to turn the puppet control lever on. Once it's on, the puppet will begin moving on a track across the ceiling that leads to a door which has some chains on it. Why are there chains on this door? Well, it's to hold back and stop the big bastard himself, Fredbear. If the puppet makes it all the way to this door, it will break it down and allow Fredbear to come out. And spoiler alert, Fredbear always knows where you are, and if he gets out, you will 100% die, because as mentioned earlier, he doesn't care about the doors, and he is faster than you are. So, all you have to do to prevent this from happening is go into the employee room and turn off the puppet control lever whenever Bonnie turns it on. This leads to you needing to be moving around pretty consistently throughout this night. Why do that when you could just hide right outside of this room, or maybe even inside of it? Well, that's where Spring Bonnie comes back in. Spring Bonnie, and in fact every character during this section, has a very specific movement pattern that they will walk in. And thank God they do, because memorizing these patterns is the only reason I ever completed this section. Spring Bonnie has the habit of walking into literally every single room in the building, and his line of sight is really large, so you will have to always maneuver around him. Also, if that wasn't awesome enough, with every hour that passes during this section, each animatronic will become more and more agile, which really just means their line of sight increases. Chica is the next character I want to quickly mention, and she is pretty boring as a character. She's just Spring Bonnie, except her path doesn't cover as much ground as his does. Her line of sight also appears to be a lot smaller than his, so that's good news, I suppose. She does go through the main party room a bit during her cycle, and that will become important later when I go over my amazing strategy. Let's cover Freddy next, as he will probably cause you the least amount of issues out of every character in this game. Freddy will randomly spawn in random rooms, typically next to the doorways. All you have to do is not walk directly into him. He won't chase you, but if you get too close, he'll instantly kill you. So really just make sure you're watching where you're going. Mangle isn't that terrible either. Side note, I know its name in the game isn't actually Mangle, but fuck you. It looks just like her, and it crawls through the fucking vents like Mangle, so I'm calling it Mangle. Mangle is also the one that killed Chris in that cutscene earlier too, by the way. Mangle is also incredibly easy to deal with. On the floors and ceilings of certain rooms, there will be large vents. Occasionally, you may notice wires coming out from those vents. That means that Mangle is waiting there, and if you walk by, she'll snatch you up. So once again, just like Freddy, open your eyes and you'll be just fine. Foxy is the only real problem during this night, as he's a random character with no pathing, and is also super easy to forget about. Foxy has the chance to be hiding behind any doorway at any time. The only way to tell if he's there is by standing next to the doorway and listening for quiet breathing. For some reason, you can't just move to one side of the door and check if he's standing there, since you literally can't see him even if he is there, which is something I died to in my playthrough, and you can see that over on my second channel, Dexter Black. That's really all of the problems to worry about during this night, but Bonnie is obviously the most dangerous. So, how should you go about pulling this off? Well, when this game first came out, there was a super awesome glitch you could use to cheese this entire section. If you remember where we hid from Foxy during a cutscene, you used to be able to hide in the exact same spot, and both Bonnie and Spring Bonnie, aka the only characters that enter the employee room, wouldn't be able to see you hiding there. And since it's in the employee room, it was right next to the puppet control switch, so you could beat the entire section just by standing in one spot. Unfortunately for me, I didn't get the luxury of being able to do that, as in the newer version of this game, during this section only, an invisible wall is placed there to block your path. So I had to play the legitimate way. This is when I started to develop my strategy. I'm gonna be so real with you, it took me about 45 minutes to complete this section. I am complete ass at these types of games, which is why I never play them. I personally really dislike the mechanic of every enemy is patrolling randomly and will chase you when seen, but you also have a bunch of bullshit to do at the same time. I know it's a common mechanic, but it's just never something I was able to get into, mainly because I don't take being chased very well at all, so it just kind of gives me a lot of anxiety. Here's how this section can be beaten 100% of the time for anyone who struggles with things like this, like I do. I came up with this myself. I'm super proud of myself. I did no walkthrough because I'm the best. The first step is to run out of the employee room as fast as you can and get to the far corner of the main party room to the left of the main stage. You have to be fast because Spring Bonnie will enter this room quickly after. While in this corner, both Spring Bonnie and Bonnie will never be able to see you, which is huge since this location also gives you an easy view of both of them since they enter through the door on your left. Once in this corner, Spring Bonnie will soon pass by. After a while, Bonnie will enter the room. Bonnie is slow as shit, so this will take a while. But once you see him, you can start following him. Bonnie doesn't care so much about killing you as he does flipping the puppet switch, so you can actually get pretty close behind him. Creep, 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 creep. That's the sound I make. Creep, creep, creep. You gotta match your steps with his, bro. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. All good. But obviously, if you get too close, he'll still kill you. Once Bonnie leaves the main party room to enter the hallway, Spring Bonnie should be up near the office, so you don't have to worry about him. Take the time it takes for Bonnie to enter the employee room and flip the switch to stand by the doorway to listen for Foxy. Once Bonnie flips the switch, quickly enter the employee room and turn it off. After Bonnie flips the switch, he will exit the room through a door you can't even open, so you don't have to worry about him turning around. After flipping the switch, you want to run back to the main party room. At this point, Chica should be inside. She will walk around the tables and exit the room through the door that both Bonnies enter through. Simply be slow and follow her. Once she leaves the room, go back into the far left corner again. This is now going to begin the second cycle. This time, since the paths that Bonnie and Spring Bonnie take are much different in length, they will be a lot closer together. Bonnie will enter the room first this time, with Spring Bonnie directly behind him. Once Spring Bonnie goes up and around the tables, you can start slowly following Bonnie. At this point, you'll have to be patient, since Spring Bonnie will enter the entrance room, then travel back into the party room, and then go into the hall to the employee room. Then we'll travel to the office. So you will hear Bonnie flip the switch, and you will have to wait probably 30 to 45 seconds before you can switch it back, because if you're too fast, Spring Bonnie will see you. If you sneak past him while he's in the entrance room, it appears that Foxy will always be behind the door to the hallway and you will die. So it's your best bet to just wait for Spring Bonnie to finish this cycle and start walking to the office. I recommend waiting directly in front of the stage during this section since he won't be able to see you. Once he goes down the hall, quickly run into the employee room and flip the switch. Then quickly run back into the party room and go right into the exit doorway. Chica will be entering the party room at this point, and if you're any closer to the stage, she will see you. Once she walks around the tables, once again, you can follow her out and go back to the hiding spot in the far left corner. Now, the third cycle gets a little bit scary, so be ready. Bonnie will soon enter the room again, with Spring Bonnie fairly close behind. However, there is enough room between Bonnie and Spring Bonnie for you to be able to get in between them. Closely follow behind Bonnie and Spring Bonnie will enter the party room. Continue to follow Bonnie into the employee room and shut the switch off immediately after Bonnie turns it on. Immediately run back to the entrance of the party room. At this point, Spring Bonnie should be walking into the exit room. You can take this small window of time to run to the front of the stage. Spring Bonnie will enter the hallway, and once he does, you're safe to go back to the exit doorway. Since Spring Bonnie is near the office, you don't need to go back to the corner. In fact, you actually shouldn't, because Chica will follow behind Bonnie. Bonnie will once again pass you, and you can once again follow him into the employee room and shut the switch. After flipping this switch this final time, you're home free. Simply sit in the employee room and this nightmare of a section will come to an end. And the best part is, since the movement of almost all of the characters is scripted, you'll be able to use this method to beat this section of the game every single time without fail. I hope you enjoyed this overtly long explanation section. It's easily what took me the longest to do while playing this game, so I figured I should devote a long time in the script talking about it. Let me know what you think. After beating this section, we get a cutscene where we're running down the hallway, being chased by Spring Bonnie. We get into the office and close the door on him, which literally cuts the fucker in half. I love this. This is peak. Absolute cinema. As we turn around, Foxy charges at us, but luckily the animatronic power gets shut off and Foxy shuts down right in front of us. Walking down the broken doors hallway, we see a deactivated Freddy, and Chica tries to kill us, only to get powered off at the same time, which actually scared me in my playthrough, which you can find on my second channel, Dexter Black. We continue to explore the now eerily quiet building. Going back to the exit, we fall to our knees, only for a door to appear in front of us, locked by a code. A voice comes over the intercoms that sounds weirdly like the guy that killed the engineer in a previous cutscene. He tells us that he's impressed by our work and that the animatronics we faced thus far will be deactivated for the remainder of our stay, aside from two, who he calls his favorites. It's now up to us to figure out the code. We find a piece of paper on the wall that says "Find me." Not totally sure what the hell that means. We wander around into the puppet room where we find writing on the wall saying "It's me." Next to this message, we find another piece of paper saying "My back is to the corner." After reading this note, the two threats of this section activate: Fredbear and Mangle. Again, Mangle acts a bit differently, so let's talk about her first. This time, she's no longer in the vents. She's walking around the building. If she sees you, she'll roar like a dinosaur. And if you don't get out of her line of sight in 4 seconds, she'll start chasing you. And she won't stop until she catches you. So just like, run, I guess, bozo. Fredbear, on the other hand, should be scary. But because of an item we got at the beginning of this segment, he really isn't. At the start of this section, we're given a taser. Fredbear will always know where you are and will constantly be crip walking towards you. Except, Fredbear while walking is very slow, so you can easily stay away from him. Every once in a while, he will also roar for some reason, and will then begin to charge at you. While he's charging, he will be faster than you, but when he gets close, use your taser to stun him and he'll go back to walking. So avoiding the threats on this segment is honestly a cakewalk compared to what we had to deal with during the last section. Now, I had a stroke trying to figure out what "my back is to the corner" meant. What you have to do is find Freddy, since his back is to the corner of the wall. Except not really, because his back is just to the wall, not really the corner. Regardless, on his back is another note stating camera 2. I've neglected to mention the cameras thus far, but that's because they're literally completely useless for the most part. Throughout the building, there are several monitor stands where you can place your monitor, because I guess you can't just hold a fucking iPad with your hands. You instead need a holder like a toddler who blares annoying ass YouTube videos while in a public restaurant, and the parents just find nothing wrong with that since they'd rather have the internet raise them instead of them. Anyways, when you place the monitor down, you can look at the cameras. Big whoop. Using your eyes is better in a game like this because you can walk around freely. Regardless, Looking at camera 2 now, we find another message saying, "I'm here." Going to the location of camera 2, you'll find another note saying, "Look up." On the ceiling, you'll find the number 7 and yet another note reading, "Inside my head." What this means, if you weren't a genius like me, is that you have to go to Foxy in the office and look in his mouth. Inside, you'll find the number 3 and another note reading, "Behind a curtain." Now, there are 3 curtains in this building, and you have to look at each of them in a specific order, which is dumb because all you're doing is looking behind them. Behind the last curtain, you'll see the number 7, and then some text reading, "The safest place," will start flashing on your screen. Let's pause. I really don't understand why it wasn't just another note. This is supposed to be like an escape room set up by the guy that locked us in here. How the fuck was he able to make us hallucinate a phrase? I don't know. Let's move on. The safest place refers to the office. Going back to the office, we find another note reading, "The second digit." Obviously, the second digit is the number 3, as it's the second digit we found on this little scavenger hunt. Finally, going back to the exit door, we can type in the code 6373. Fun fact, by the way, you can actually just type in this code at the start of this section if you don't want to go through all the bullshit I just explained, because there's no check here to see if you have or not. But after punching in the code, the door disappears. Opening another door that it was covering leads to another room with no fucking door. Falling to our knees again, all of a sudden the door reappears for some reason, and a bunch of police officers barge in past us, and we're taken out of the building to safety. After being rescued, we're shown a cutscene where Thomas is either being interviewed by police or is in a therapy session. I can't quite tell which one is correct. He freaks out about his friends being killed and then realizes he never heard anything from Ashley. No screams, no body found, nothing. This makes him tweak like when I'm in line at the grocery store and some 40-year-old mom pulls out her own grocery bags to save the environment. You want to know what I do when I see someone using their own bags in the grocery store? When it's my turn in line, I tell the bagger, "Hey, all my shit, double bag it." Anyways, after this cutscene, we're thrown into the credits. But that's not where this game comes to an end. We actually get a post-credit scene like it's a Marvel movie, where Thomas is in his room. He wakes up in the middle of the night and looks out his window, only to see the silhouette of an animatronic we never saw in the pizzeria staring back at him. And finally, Fredbear and Friends Reboot comes to a close. Overall, I think this game was a super enjoyable experience. Did I get overtly frustrated and almost give up while playing the survival section? Yes, but I beat it, and I'm glad I did. The story to this game is simple and nice. There's no retarded digging that we have to do to learn the simplest things like a fucking name of a character, Scott, asshole. We're instead just given a story the way it should be given. A few mysteries here and there, but nothing so overtly frustrating that it makes it not fun to figure out. The game looks gorgeous, it plays well when you understand what you're doing, and overall I would highly recommend you give it a go. Obviously, from the teaser we saw at the end of the game, a second game was clearly in the works. But with no updates for several years, and it being confirmed that at some point the game's development was put on halt, and given the fact that this game came out 7 years ago, I don't think it's very likely we'll see Chapter 2 anytime soon. But hey, only time will tell. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you think this game was actually doo-doo ass rank? Let me know in the comments below. In my next Week at Freddy's video, I asked you guys what FNAF game you guys thought doesn't get enough recognition, and my favorite answer is this one by Seal Bonk. They said the Dormitibus remake, and I agree. I think that title has been dragged through the mud for obvious reasons, and I don't think a lot of people know that a remake even came out. Definitely go check it out if you haven't. The question of this video is, what is your least favorite mechanic from an official FNAF game, and why? With the question of the video being asked, subscribe to the channel, I'd appreciate it a lot. Grab some merch if you like having drip. I've been Dexter, and I'll see you all in the next video. See ya!